Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Monday evening with We the People, presented by the Diamond Factory. Tonight, we have a very special guest on tonight, Mr. Evan Jaqua, and I'm hoping that I pronounced that right, uh, who is a part of the Solutions Party. I know a lot of people are looking for an alternative to the two parties that we have right now, and I thought this might be a great guest to bring on. Without further ado, let's bring Mr. Jaqua. Am I pronouncing that correctly, sir?
Actually, you pronounce it Jaqua, but that's okay. Nobody gets it right the first time. Nobody gets it right. My whole life, nobody's ever got it right.
Well, luckily, I just have just a plain little four-letter last name that is very common. But thank you very much for joining us tonight. How's everything up in your neck of the woods? You're in Portland, I believe.
Oh, I am. Yeah, it's been, the weather's a little unstable. It's raining on and off, and it's still a little on the cool side. But the good thing about living up here is that the summers are absolutely spectacular. So, we pay what I call the rain tax during a good part of the year, but we get a nice dividend when summer comes, a nice weather dividend.
Yeah, I can't complain too much about the weather here in San Diego. I moved here a few years ago and haven't left yet. So
Well, I
it's
actually grew up in the LA area. In fact, I grew up in Pacific Palisades. And so, the city that was ruined through the fires recently.
that would
And
that would have been your neck of the woods, right?
yeah, yeah, Pacific Palisades. And so I love Southern California, and it's heartbreaking that my hometown was burnt to the ground completely. But, we press forward.
Yeah, yes, we do. Uh, I was uh, kind of getting a little introduction to the Solutions Party.
Mhm.
Uh, could you tell me what inspired you to create the Solution Party, and how does it differ from traditional third parties?
Well, let me tell you that I've had the wonderful opportunity of living in many different parts of the world. I lived in Japan many years. I was South America. I lived in China. I've had the great honor of talking to many different people and getting a lot of different ideas. And so, really, the Solutions Party is sort of a culmination of a lot of ideas I've heard from people around the world. Now, how do we differ from any other party? Well, number one, fundamentally, we believe in getting rid completely of reelection. In other words, not only getting rid of reelection, but even just making it one term. And during that one term, you cannot run for another office. After your term ends, you have to wait 2 years before you can run for another term or for another office. You can never run for the same office again. And I'll explain in more detail why we have that. Number two, the second difference is that we believe that political parties should be sunsetted after a certain amount of time. And I'll explain why we believe that too. And number three, we offer a whole range of different proposals to address many of the problems that we see in our country, and in fact, even problems that are common to so many places around the world. And so I would say that those are the big three differences. And when I say, sunsetting political parties, that would include us too. We propose that any political party should have a lifetime of 12 years maximum before it's sunsetted, and I'll explain that in detail, at some point during our conversation. But I just wanted to briefly say, term limits, hard term limits, one term, um, limited lifetime on political parties, and number three, a range of what we like to call bold ideas to address a range of problems that our country has, very serious problems.
Now, some of those do sound very interesting, and as you said, I'm sure we'll get into into them more as we go along. Uh,
Mhm.
your platform calls for ending politics as usual.
Yes.
Uh, and what do you see as the biggest obstacle
The
to
biggest
achieving?
problem, the biggest problem with politics now, we believe, is an age-old problem. And let me just give a little bit of a tiny bit of background, is that the human brain is a wonderful thing, but one of the problems with the human brain is that it forms addictions very easily. You know, people can get addicted to video games, social media, alcohol, drugs, gambling. But probably the most addictive thing there is political power, is power. Once people have it, they don't want to give it up. In some cases, you know, you look at, dictators, they'll drop barrel bombs on innocent people to keep in power. In North Korea, they'll send entire families to gruesome prison camps to stay in power. And what happens in our country? As the political writer, the Pulitzer Prize winning writer George Will said, there's not a dime of difference between Democrats and Republicans in that their first priority is staying in office. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want politicians who are in office just to stay in office. We want politicians who are there to propose, advocate ideas, negotiate those ideas, compromise as necessary, and move the country forward. But unfortunately, everything they do is skewed toward winning re-election, and that is our biggest problem. And so the only way, if James, if I had to give, if I were a doctor and I had to give you a highly addictive medication, what would be the way to prevent you from getting addicted to it? Well, small potions spread apart, small portions or doses spread apart. And that's exactly how political power has to be allocated. And that's the biggest thing that we think is required for political reform. But we also believe that election reform is necessary. We believe that there has to be a way to address lying in politics because democracy should be a competition of ideas and vision. Instead, what it's become a circus of lying and emotion manipulation. And, that is not how a democracy should work because what has happened, instead of becoming a competition of ideas, it's become a war, a tribal war, where the mindless tribalism, where people uh, won't vote for or even listen to the other party. In fact, they not only won't listen to them, they actually despise the other party. And that shouldn't how it be. We should have a system where we listen to the different ideas, we vote on them, and we move forward. It's that simple. And that is our biggest advantage as a country, is our diversity of ideas. I've lived in a communist country, and I've seen the miserable, the wretched system where only one idea, only one thought is allowed. We are potentially much better than that because precisely because of the diversity of our ideas. Let's get the emotions, let's get the lies out of our politics, let's concentrate on the ideas, and things will work out much, much better.
But Evan, I'm thinking of the Continental Congress.
Uh-huh.
And even if you go back that far, there was the mindless competition, the urge to win, regardless of what you had to say to your particular party or your particular way of life. So you're talking about doing away with something that basically has roots in our politics.
Well, one of the things about our democracy, is that we need to evolve it to address new problems. That's democracy is an experiment. How has human society functioned for 99.99% of its history? Well, nations were ruled by monarchs, kings, emperors, warlords, religious leaders, small groups of elites. Democracy is an experiment where you give the people the power, and it's an experiment. And there are some fundamental weaknesses with our democracy. In fact, one of the weaknesses is that Winston Churchill said, if you want to know what's wrong with democracy, have a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. And basically what we have is that many of our voters, we have a minority of voters many times just participating in the election, and many times those voters are not well informed. We've got to address that weakness in our democracy. And so, yeah, we're coming up with a way to take the addiction to power out of the equation. We're, you're not going to be able to get addicted to power if you can only serve one term. And if you're only going to serve one term, the message is this: you have one chance to make your mark on history. You have one chance to do something good for the country. Now, are you going to take that one chance and do some self-serving stuff, or are you going to do your best to make your mark on history and make a positive difference? And so that's really the fundamental idea is number one, making it impossible to get addicted to power so that our politicians concentrate on doing their job, not spending half their time raising money for their next campaign, not in constant campaign mode like what we have now. You've got one chance, you dedicate your entire term to doing your job, and then you move on. And in a couple of years, you can run for another office, but never that same office. Then we have proposals to address the other weaknesses in our democracy, educating voters, going after politicians who lie, because this is another big problem. So this is basically the idea. Democracy evolves. My cousin used to play for the Washington Redskins, and they had a motto, winners make mistakes, losers make them twice. And the important thing is, you make mistakes. Our democracy is not perfect, but you learn from those mistakes and you refine things and you make things better. And that's, I think, the dysfunction that we're seeing in our democracy now, and the dysfunction that we see with all democracies, as Winston Churchill said, is something we can address and we can make better and make our democracy function as it should.
And now, you how do you respond to critics who say that political parties, despite their flaws, they provide a structure and a continuity
Uh-huh.
in government?
Okay, number one, I think it's important to mention that George Washington warned against political parties. He said political parties can be corrupt, can be hijacked by individuals. Corrupt individuals can become vulnerable um, to foreign influence, can inflame party passions, where people just mindlessly support their party instead of really, doing what's best for they put their party first. And this is something I'll talk about something in just a second. But on the other hand, political parties do serve a purpose. They should. So what political parties should be is a way for people of similar ideas to organize and present candidates accordingly. Okay, so what do we want? We want to have the best of both worlds. We want to have our political parties where they exist to allow people to come together under certain ideas, certain visions that they may have, and present their candidates accordingly, but we don't want them to become what's called institutionalized. Now, let me just explain very briefly what I mean by institutionalized. The famous historian Carroll Quigley um, talked about the fact that institutions or tend to become or organizations tend to become institutionalized, which means that they're set up originally to do something, but then they take on a life of their own, where the priorities of the organization become the priority instead of what the organization originally stood for. Let's take an extreme example: the Communist Party. The Communist Party was set up to empower workers, but what did it end up becoming? It ended up becoming a cult-like religion that benefited, a vicious cult-like religion that benefited only the top leaders and that subjugated hundreds of millions of people to unimaginable oppression, and it still does. Let's take a look at organized religion. Religion or churches were set up as places of worship, but then they start taking on a life of their own, where the interests of the church become the priority, as opposed to what its original purpose was. And this is what happens with political parties. They might be set up promote certain ideas, but sooner or later they become the party first mentality occurs, where the interests of the party become more important than the interests of the country. Okay, in order to prevent that institutionalization, as the historian Carol, what we propose is we put a 12-year limit on a political party, on a government recognized political party. What's a government recognized political party? A party that has a certain minimum number of members. After 12 years, the party has to be disbanded, and the leaders of the party can never be a leader of another government recognized political party. So in this case, the idea is to disband the Republican Democratic parties, start new parties, and we would only want 2 or 3 parties because of government recognized, because you don't want to have a situation where you have the silonization. I don't know if that's a word or not, but where you have 1,500 different political parties and nothing, you can't ever really, you want to force people to kind of form coalitions and form, 2 or 3 major parties. And these parties, after they're disbanded, some people might say, well, won't the new parties just be carbon copies of the old parties? And I don't think that's going to happen. Nobody's going to say, hey, we're just exactly like the last guys. They're going to have new ideas. They're going to want to bring new people, fresh blood. And so we want the best of both worlds. We want to have political parties that do serve their purpose of giving people a flag under which they can organize based on certain ideas, based on the vision that they have for the country. But we don't want the parties to exist so long that they become tribalized, which is like what we have now. Let me just give you one little example, and I'll be very brief. Back in, I used to deliver when I was a teenager soda pop and bread to rural markets in Utah. And this was 1976. And we could talk to people about who they were going to vote for, Jimmy Carter or Gerald Ford. There wasn't the viciousness that we see now. People were open to listening to the other party, but that's completely gone now. The Democrats are all going to vote for Democrat. I mean, there's some exceptions, of course, and Republicans, but it's going to become completely tribal. And that is by design. That is by design because politicians and political parties love it when they have people who are automatically going to vote for them, regardless of the ideas anybody is proposing. That makes their job a lot easier. For example, Kamala Harris, she didn't try to find votes in Texas or Florida. Donald Trump didn't try to find votes in California or New York. But that's not how it should be. Our politicians should be fighting for every vote, and everybody's vote should be up for grabs. It should be their job to talk to the voters clearly and honestly, present their ideas, don't misrepresent what the other people say for, and then let the voters decide based on clear, honest information.
Now, before we get into your policy and governance reform, your platform suggests a major overhaul of how political parties operate.
Exactly.
So, rotating, how would a system of rotating temporary parties function in practice, since you're not going to have carryover?
Yeah.
If you understand what I'm saying, when I mean
Yeah, I
carry.
do. I do. The idea is, okay, let's suppose that 3 political parties start in 2050. Okay, that means that they'll exist until 2062. So around 2067 or so, people will start laying the groundwork to start forming parties so that they will be set up to take over in 2062 when the 3 existing parties are disbanded. So yeah, maybe during the whole 12-year process while these other parties exist, or it probably won't be all 12 years, but people will start, formulating ideas. There'll be new problems and new ideas, and people will start to coalesce under different ideas, and from that, a political party can be born. But yes, you would have, I mean, and 12 years is not a magic number. That's just a proposal. Maybe it should be longer. Maybe it should be 16 years. Maybe it should be 20 years. But the point is that you put a time limit so that you prevent the parties from becoming, first of all, a party first mentality, and two, to prevent things from going tribal, which is what we have now.
So, how do you get experienced leaders if you're having a consistent
Well, the
overturn?
thing is, what I think what we really need to ask um, when we talk about political experienced politicians, you have to ask yourself, well, what are they experienced at? Well, they're experienced at being in constant campaign mode. They're experienced at spending half their time raising money for their next campaign. I mean, literally half the time on their job, raising money for their. They're good at playing politics. They're good at being very partisan. They're very good at avoiding giving clear answers. If you ask a politician a question, they very rarely do they give you a clear answer. They always give you they either don't even, sometimes they don't even answer the question, or they give you a very ambiguous question. And so, our politicians are experienced at being politicians. And I don't think that I think that what's more important is that you get fresh blood coming in with each election cycle. People who the voters will have the confidence in to select. If they select somebody, it's because they believe the person has the good ideas and the person has the ability to implement those ideas, to negotiate those ideas and make them reality. You know, Abraham Lincoln was a one-term congressman. Abraham Lincoln was a one-term president. That didn't make him less effective. And if there's institutional knowledge that needs to be gained, well, I bet most people, if they went through a week-long seminar before they took office about how Congress works, would do just fine. And we can make advisors, neutral advisors, or a range of advisors available to them. Because right now, our politicians aren't experts on every subject. They already have teams of advisors to help them through, to help them understand the different laws that they might be considering. But I don't think I think that the lack of experience is not an issue at all. I think what is more important is having, dedicating yourself full time to implementing the ideas that your constituents have endorsed and working full time, not, spending half your time, on the campaign trail looking to get reelected, not spending all your time, on partisan activities to promote, what your party is doing. We want to get that out of the equation. We want our elected officials, our elected, the people that we select, we want them concentrating on the ideas. We want them negotiating with others and coming up with taking the best ideas from all sides and moving forward.
So, what specific policies would your party prioritize in its first years?
Well, we have a range of ideas, and for example, putting a one-term limit, that's not in the Constitution, and so what we would require is to convince people to vote for people who promise to serve only one term, and when they're in that one term, they're not going to use that one term to use as a springboard for their next election. So that's number one, but the idea is to eventually codify this into the Constitution, ideally. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that the whole range of things that need to be addressed: journalism, judicial reform, journalistic reform, uh, uh, dealing with the scourge of drugs, the war on drugs, a war on corruption that not only for us, but we work with that because with other countries, because corruption is a worldwide problem and it's affecting us all. It's one of the reasons why we have a terrible immigration or refugee problem, and that's another issue: is to solutions for the refugee crisis that we have, uh, solutions that actually help us, where we get the best of both worlds. We help people who are escaping from violence, from tyranny, and at the same time, we're helping them. We're actually helping ourselves. We can come up with the best of both worlds solutions if we have people, politicians, and elected officials who are thinking outside the box and can make it work for us. Because right now it's working for the world's tyrannies. The world's tyrannies like Venezuela, Nicaragua, Belarus, they're purposely sending, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of refugees to the democracies to destabilize us. It's part of their strategy. This is one of the reasons why we have a refugee crisis, is people fleeing tyranny. And for the tyrants, it's a double benefit. The people who flee their countries are usually not the ones who are supporting the tyrant. And number two, they go to democratic countries, and that causes instability in those democratic countries, like we're seeing in this country, like we see in other South American democracies, and like what we're seeing in the European democracies. So yeah, we have a range of different ideas that we have proposed that would be part of the platform. But the one thing that I also want to emphasize is these are just ideas. Hopefully, if we, we get this thing launched and we get a range of different, candidates, we're going to refine those ideas, make them better. And some candidates might have different ideas, and that's okay. We want a whole range of ideas, and we want to have an open discussion of the ideas, and we want to take the best elements of the different ideas and try to move them forward.
So, how do you plan to remove the influence of money and special interests from the election process?
Well, okay, what special interests? Okay, what do special interests? Why do special interests put money into the policies? Because they want the politician to work for them. Okay, that's what they want. But it's going to be much harder for special interests to have influence over a one-term politician. How many times have you heard, for example, that such and such politician is not up for re-election so they can vote their conscience? Okay, don't we always want our politicians voting their conscience? Why is it that if they're up for re-election, they're going to skew their vote so to enhance their re-election possibilities? So if they are only serving one term, it makes it much more difficult for special interests to leverage control over them. And so that's one of the things. And the other thing is that we have made a range of proposals to improve our journalism. One of the biggest problems in our country is our journalism, the sorry state of our journalism. What has happened to our journalism? Very briefly, very briefly, is that in the old days, it was very difficult to set up a news organization. You couldn't know, you had to have a lot of money. If you wanted to set up a newspaper, you had to have a printing press, you had to have reporters, you had to have ways to distribute the newspapers, you had to have a team that would work on advertising. If you wanted to set up a radio station or a television network, that required a lot of investment. But with the internet, what has happened is that any Joe with a laptop and a web page can make a news site. And so the traditional model, the news model, has collapsed. And what have our news stations, quote unquote news stations, come? Instead of being news stations, they've gotten into the business of emotion manipulation. People don't listen to Fox. People don't listen to MSNBC to get the news. They listen to those to get emotional. They get their daily influx of rage and other emotions. This is their business model, and this is one of the former personalities on Fox News wrote a book called Foxocracy, I think it was called, in which she talked about what they would do every morning is look for the most emotionally charged stories and then put those on to get people to coming back, because it's actually a very addictive emotion. Rage, hate, anger, these are very addictive emotions, and people get addicted to them and they keep coming back for more. And this is what we want to get rid of. We want to have our journalism get away from that. And we've made a number of proposals to do that. But if our proposals are adopted, we believe that journalism will become credible again. And once journalism is credible again, it's going to be much harder for money and special interests in our elections. Because what do money and special interests do? They spread misinformation and lies about their own candidate or the other candidate. And if we have solid journalism, that'll act as a solid counterweight to that. And also, we have proposed ways to hold politicians accountable. James, if you're a business owner and you're interviewing somebody for your company and you catch them lying during the interview, you have every right to throw them out of the interview. Or if you're a business owner and one of your employees lies to you, you have every right to fire them. So why don't we hold our politicians to that same standard? If a politician lies during a political campaign to the public, they should be disqualified, just like a job applicant would be, because it's even worse with a politician, because a politician is asking that the people give them, that politician, the sacred power of the people. And to get that sacred power of the people by lying should be considered an unforgivable offense that would eliminate them from consideration. And our politicians too, if they are caught blatantly lying, there should be real ramifications for that, just like there would be for any other employee. So,
Perjury,
what's that?
perjury, criminal, criminal charges. Yes, I
Yes,
agree.
yes, exactly. Because we're entrusting these people with the power of the people, and we're expecting them to tell us the truth. And if they lie, they are doing great damage to our democracy, great damage to our country. And we can't allow that. And so we have to have real ramifications for lying when seeking office and lying once you're in office. And that's going to make it much harder for the situation we have now, which our elections are decided by, yeah, razzle dazzle marketing campaigns and frankly, stupid attack ads. And it's just so much misinformation, and this is on purpose. And we got to get that out of there. We got to put in place a system that makes it very severe if somebody lies, either trying to get into office or won their office. We have to have robust journalism. And number three, we have to give incentives to voters to get educated on the issues. This is what Winston Churchill talked about when he said, if you want to know what's wrong with democracy, have a conversation with the average 5-minute conversation with the average voter. What we want is to have a system where voters are incentivized to learn the issues, to learn the ideas. And we've proposed that. Now, any politician worth their salt should welcome this, because if you're really confident about your ideas, you want the voters to know what your ideas are. You know, let's make an example, an analogy with sales. A first-rate salesperson doesn't have to lie. A first-rate salesperson doesn't have to trash the competition. They have the confidence in their product, and they can talk truthfully about their product. They can talk truthfully about the competition because they believe they can make a case that will convince the customer. The fourth-rate salesperson is the person who will say anything to make the sale. They'll lie. They'll lie about their product. They'll lie about their service. They'll lie about the competition. And in the real world, fourth-rate salespeople usually don't last very long. First-rate salespeople do. But right now, what do we have? Our politicians are fourth-rate salespeople who will say anything to get elected. They will say anything once they're in office to get reelected. And we don't want that. We want people who are running for office, are confident in their ideas, are going to express those ideas clearly, and then we want our voters to get familiar with those ideas so they can make informed choices based on accurate portrayal of what the different ideas being presented to them are. That's how our democracy will work. Once our democracy is working, prosperity and greater freedom will come.
Yeah, we'll get into the economic and social vision of the party here in a minute. But how do you see government uh, balancing the role of addressing societal problems and still impacting market driven solutions?
Well, let's be clear. Um, Market-based economy, a capitalist economy, uh, is the best one compared to a government-run economy for achieving widespread prosperity and solving problems or addressing problems and creating prosperity. So we want a market-based economy, but we have to also recognize that there's certain things that the market cannot address, like infrastructure, energy infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, national defense. So we want to have an efficient government that invests in our education infrastructure, which means that anybody can get educated. Right now, what we have is a very high risk, low return education environment. People are spending a hell of a lot of money to get a college degree or to get, uh, get themselves trained on something, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to find a good job. I've known so many college grads who have gotten excellent grades, have studied things practical, and they graduate and they can't find any work. And they've spent, many tens of thousands, some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. We want something where people can, we want to invest in our educational infrastructure so that anybody can go back to school and learn a new skill. It doesn't mean everybody's going to get a PhD in chemical engineering or in computer science. When we say education, it could be becoming a heavy equipment operator. It could be becoming an electrician, it becoming a plumber, or it could become a computer programmer, or um, um, uh, uh, physics, whatever. We want to have education being defined in a very broad way. So it's not just college, but it's grade school as well. Because what is so critical for a market economy to function is um, you need to have an adaptive workforce. See, in a market-based economy, things are always changing, things are dynamic, and that's good. But people have to buy in to the concept of change, that their company might fold, but that's okay because there are going to be lots of new opportunities. They might have to learn a new skill, but we're going to make that very easily for them to do. And number two, if they don't have an income between jobs, we make welfare temporary so that they can continue to pay the rent, they can continue to buy food, but it's got to have a limit. But during that time, they're expected to look for work and or learn a new skill. This idea that of lifetime employment in a certain company is just not the way the economies work anymore. Things are very dynamic. Things are changing, and that's good news. People have to buy into that change. So we want a government that's ever more efficient, and we can do that because we've made proposals how to do that. And we want, though, the government to work with the private sector to achieve prosperity for all. And the government role is doing what government does best, which is investing in large infrastructure-like projects that private industry can't. The market-driven economy can't. And we want, though, to have our dynamic market-based economy with an adaptive and creative workforce. And that way, by infinite or unlimited energy. Our theory is that innovation plus unlimited energy will equal prosperity. And so that's kind of a long-winded response to your question, but I can be a little more specific if you'd like.
Well, I'm sure we'll get down as we get down into it. You will be much more specific uh, because I want to go into your economic and social vision. And
Okay.
one thing that you talk about is, I've already said that the middle class, we have no more middle class. The
Hmm.
middle class is
You're
dead.
right.
Uh, you
Hmm.
know, at my age, 78, I've seen all of the changes where, first it was, the house with the picket fence, two kids, a dog, and, you know,
Right.
things that now are not, don't seem to be a priority, uh,
Hmm.
this particular generation. But your platform calls for making uh, the erosion, recovering. I guess
Yes.
I want to
Uh-huh.
say reversing
Yes. Uh-huh.
the
Yes.
erosion of the middle class. What
Yes.
specific policies would you implement in order to achieve this?
Okay, well, let's look at how our economy is set up now. The fundamental, the basis the foundation of the economy is and always will be energy. Right now, our our economy is based primarily on what we call a non-renewable, in fact, a non-renewable resource, fossil fuels. And the problem with fossil fuels is that they are non-renewable, which means there's ever less of them, that they are a globally traded commodity, which means that we cannot really control prices. Because even if we increase production, others will decrease production because prices have to be kept at a certain level. And there's a reason why our economy is based on the fossil fuel industry, but it's because, for one thing, it's been like that for over 200 years. But also, the fossil fuel industry is extremely powerful. They have a business model that is ideal. And what is that business model? Well, it's that they have hundreds of millions, billions of repeat customers. I mean, every week we have to go to the gas station and fill up. The best business to be in is one where you have repeat customers, and the fossil fuel has that. And how? Number two, for the fossil fuel industry, the barriers to entry are very high, and so you can't just start a fossil fuel company like an Exxon or Shell in a garage. Number three, they enjoy immense power because of the fact that they control energy. They provide the foundation of our economy, and that's why they even enjoy protection from our military. We have the Fifth Fleet in the Persian Gulf protecting the flow of fossil fuels because it's so critical to our economy. But energy is everywhere. It's like air. It's like water. We have energy in the sun, in the rays of the sun, in the wind, in the tides, below our feet, in the atom. And so why is it that we are basing our energy, our foundation of our economy, on a non-renewable, dirty, globally traded resource that is, by the way, controlled by large corporations, huge multinational corporations, by despots like Putin, and by royal families? Energy should be considered like water. It's like we're importing water from Saudi Arabia when we have all sorts of water here. And we could literally make unlimited energy here. In fact, to power the whole United States, we could do so with just a 100-mile by 100-mile solar panel farm somewhere in Nevada. But let's build more and more energy. Let's make it unlimited, because once we have unlimited energy, according to physics, is the ability to do work. If we have unlimited energy, we have the ability to unlimited work. And what are some of the things we could do with unlimited energy? Well, we could desalinate seawater. No more droughts. We could set up cities and pump the water to cities where previously you couldn't live because you were too far from a water source. We can clean our environment, the plastic pollution out, come up with innovative ways to do that. Once you have infinite or unlimited energy, and you combine that with a very innovative workforce, we're going to create lots of new jobs based on harnessing that energy in combination with the innovation, which the innovation will be used to solve so many of our problems, and jobs will come. And with all that energy, we can also much more economically, produce food crops, so we can keep our food at reasonable prices. Water and electricity will be far cheaper. And I think what will happen is that you combine unlimited energy with an adaptable and innovative workforce. The jobs will come, good jobs will come, and the middle class will start working. Why have we lost so much of the middle class? Because our politicians are working for special interests. And what has happened? We've seen greater concentration of wealth. Like the top 1.1 of 1% of the upper class owns more than the bottom 50%. What we want is, we want the rich to get richer, but we want the middle class to be growing, so that the middle class, the overall percentage of wealth of the middle class, becomes a greater percentage of the overall wealth. And we can make that happen if we have unlimited energy, if we have a creative and adaptive workforce, if we have our politicians working for the people instead of the special interests, we can make all of this happen. There's no reason why we cannot have a growing, opportunity-rich economy that gives people lots of opportunities to work, to advance in their career. And if they want to make a change, we'll have the educational infrastructure in place where they can do that. And I believe that once you have those things in place, the middle class will grow and become ever more prosperous.
Well, now you call for abundant energy and a dynamic opportunity creating economy.
Mhm.
Does that mean that you support specific energy policies such as deregulation or perhaps green alternatives?
Well, I think,
I've heard
you
you mention solar and wind.
well,
What
I
do you
think,
know?
you know, water is not provided to us by some multinational corporation. It's, we have utilities, but the water does not, it's not being sold to us. And I think energy, while I believe in a market economy, I think the energy infrastructure should be the property of the people, should be government run, and we invest in producing ever more energy uh, through a variety of means, as I say, increasing solar, increasing wind. Nuclear energy is much safer now than it used to be. Geothermal, tidal energy. We've also, gotten much better at being able to store energy for off-peak times. Let's continue to work on nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion promises to be a much safer, infinite source of energy. In fact, some people have said, "Gosh, once we develop nuclear fusion, the world will be revolutionized because we'll have an infinite source of energy, clean energy." Well, we already have an infinite source of clean energy. So yeah, I believe, there's some things that the government, has to do. National defense, transportation infrastructure. Well, let's have the government. Our vision for the government is to invest in ever more energy producing plants, and solar plants, wind farms, what have you. And let's start phasing out the fossil fuels. The fossil fuels have served humankind wonderfully, but they are a dirty form of energy. Yeah, as somebody who grew up in LA in the early 70s when we couldn't go outside and play because the air was too contaminated, and I've lived in major cities and have dealt with horrible fossil fuel based pollution many times in my life. It's a dirty, antiquated form of energy that, frankly, we don't need anymore. It's not about hating fossil fuels. It's about moving to something that's much more appropriate, given where our country needs to go.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. How does the Solutions Party plan to reform the education to create more skilled and innovative workforce? I mean, even McDonald's are becoming automated.
Mhm.
The jobs that we used to have coming out of high school, a lot of those things are not uh, around anymore. I mean, the newspaper boy, for instance, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
bread and soda to
Mhm.
uh, the neighborhood store. I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of those things are becoming either animated or where it used to take two people to do that job. Now it's only
Mhm.
one.
Yeah. Well, number one, um, I think that it should be. I don't want to say it's a human right, or I don't want to declare it a human right, but I think that we should not expect people to have to work more than 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Right now people are working 16 hours a day, and that has, sometimes six days or more a week. And I think that we have to work for a society where people are working less, but still able to enjoy, the basics in life. The most important thing is, food, shelter, educational opportunities, and we can make that happen. And technology. should be used to make our lives easier. You know, back in the 60s or 50s, people probably thought that technology was going to liberate people so they would work ever less. And that's how it should be, you know. But right now, unfortunately, technology has caused many people to, you know, lose their jobs, or the jobs they do get to replace them are ever worse. But I believe, though, that you know, the world is filled with problems. Our country has many problems. You know, let's let's just look at one of them, like a uncontrolled plastic pollution. Let's come up with ways to remove the plastics from our for our environment. Let's come up with ways to recycle much better. Let's come up with infinitely recyclable plastics so we don't just have what we have now, you know, use and dispose, and that just ends up in landfills or in the oceans. You know, there are a whole range of problems that need to be solved, housing problems, education, lack of education opportunities. And I think there are going to be lots of good jobs, you know, refugee problems, mental health issues, aging population. There's so many different problems in our society, so many challenges, I should say, that there are going to be lots of opportunities for people to have fulfilling jobs, even as automation comes in, you know, becomes greater and greater. But as it does, let's have automation make our lives easier, make our jobs easier. Let's have automation make it so that we don't have to work as much and we still can enjoy a secure and healthy life. That's what we want. That's where we want to go. As people had originally envisioned technology would do, would make our lives easier. We would work less. We would live healthier. We would live a little more stress free. And we can make that happen.
Yes, that's always been the vision of the working class, to make life easier, to make life easier for future generations. But
Exactly.
what is your stance on taxation and fiscal responsibility? And how would you vision government being funded?
Well, I think, okay, number one, I believe that you know, we've got to get the deficit spending under control because right now, you know, we have such huge national debt and we're paying an immense amount of money just paying the interest. And this is really cruel because it's going to be the burden of future generations. You know, if you heard about a guy in your neighborhood who was spending wildly with a credit card but planned to send the bill to their grandkids when they were old enough, you would think, gosh, what a schmo. But you know, this is exactly what we're doing now. We're building up all this debt and you know somebody's got to deal with it and it's becoming increasingly the you know placed on the younger and younger you know generations and future generations, and I think we got to get back to fiscal responsibility. Now I think though that you have a growing economy based on what I talked about: unlimited energy, creative and adaptive workforce, a government that is investing in infrastructure. You have business, a whole businesses are. We also propose holding businesses to a higher standard. Our philosophy is, when it comes to business, is this: you know, businesses, you want to make money in business, but business is more than just making money. It's about making a contribution. So we have proposed a way to evaluate businesses, you know, so that people can see this evaluation. You know, maybe it just be a number on a box, but they can see, you know, the factors that led to that valuation, so that they can, you know, they can decide, you know, do they want to do business with this company, you know, based on their rating, their business rating, which business rating means that, you know, for example, you know, how much do they make their stuff in America? What's their customer support reputation? How do they treat their employees? What's their environmental footprint? Um, what's the difference between the highest paid and the lowest paid? You know, a whole range of factors. And so that, you know, for example, if you go and you want to buy, oh, I don't know, a microwave, and one microwave is more expensive, but they have a very high rating when it comes to manufacturing in the US. And you have another microwave that has a lower rating because it's made overseas, and maybe the company has a lower environmental record. But the point is that If you have some extra money and you want to support a company that's making products in this country and it has a good environmental record, you'll spend a little more. But if you're on a budget and you need to save money, well, you can buy the product that has from the lower business rating. The company, the manufacturer has a lower business rating. But the point is to make businesses more accountable, so that they're contributing to, um, they're doing making a positive contribution. They're not just making money, by any means possible. So the combination, as I say, I'm going to repeat: unlimited energy, innovation, adaptable workforce, businesses that are working to, make positive contributions, a government that is ever more efficient. We've made proposals to make government more efficient, but is investing in the critical infrastructure. That's going to those will be the ingredients for an ever more prosperous and growing economy. And once we have an ever more prosperous and growing company, the tax revenues will come, and that will help pay down the deficit, and that will help us, balance the budget. Because also we propose ways to make government more efficient, and one of the ways to do that is to go after waste, like for example in the Pentagon. There's the terrible waste going on in the Pentagon that should be. We need to have the Pentagon declare a war on waste, on itself, so that we find out, we weed out unnecessary weapon systems that are being funded. We close unnecessary military bases. We make the organization more efficient. We make spending on military related spending, much more accountable, so it's not this feeding frenzy that it is now. And then we all look for ways to make government more efficient in general. We've made some proposals for that. And so if government is made more efficient, that means it leaves less money. And if we have a growing economy based on the set of ingredients that I talked about, that will increase revenue. So make government more efficient on one hand and increase the revenue through a growing economy based on those ingredients that I talked about. That the fiscal responsibility will come and the income will come.
I want to talk about your electoral and political system overall.
Okay.
Your platform calls for making elections about ideas and vision rather
Yes.
than marketing campaigns. How would you reform the electoral process to achieve this?
Well, like I mentioned before, number one is you've got to hold politicians accountable and ensure that they tell the truth. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you've got to give voters incentives to learn the issues and to vote according and to vote. We've made some proposals to encourage giving voters incentives to vote, to learn the issues and vote. Some, hopefully attractive issues where you get people, we want our voters to be informed, and we want to have as many, a highest percentage of, as high a percentage as possible of voters voting, because then our elections will be much more legitimate. And number three, is journalism reform, where that people can, they can rely on our mainstream media to be telling them what the truth is, because that's really what people want to know, the truth. People want to understand what is real and what is not real. And we've got to have ways to bring back credibility in our journalism. So I think that once you have a way of holding politicians accountable for lies, number two, and by the way, those politicians will only serve one term, so special interests will have far less influence. Number two, educating, giving voters incentives to become familiar with the issues. And number three, making our journalism trusted again, widespread trusted, because the fact that the starry state of our journalism is one of the reasons why we're in the situation we are now, why we have these terrible culture wars. And that's what the enemies of our country, the enemies who want to see democracy fail, are taking advantage of this to spread misinformation. There's a reason why Russian, Chinese, and Iranian trolls are spreading misinformation on social media, because they want us to be confused. They want us to be uh, not knowing what to believe. They want us to be tribal and vicious toward each other, because then democracy breaks down, because that's what they want. That's what the dictators, the autocrats, the theocrats, and other very powerful people want. They want us to return to a world where nations are ruled by monarchs or dictators or royal families or religious leaders like they have in Iran and in Afghanistan. They want the world to return to that. And the way they do that is by destroying democracy. And one of the ways they were trying to destroy democracy is by spreading misinformation and by inflaming emotions. But if we have robust journalism, that will be our defense against that. And in fact, making journalism robust again, should be the moral equivalent of our national defense, because our journalism, if you believe the pen is mightier than the sword, if you believe the pen is mightier than the sword, then our journalism should be at least as important as our national defense. And we should be investing in our journalism, making journalism a viable career again, and making putting into place systems that improve the confidence in people that people have in our journalism.
So, would you, as a solutions party, would you advocate for a ranked system of voting, ranked choice, that is, or other election reforms?
Well, we don't really, the ranked choices is a good idea, but that could be incorporated into the other changes that we have proposed. That could be very complementary. But we believe that the election reform that needs to be done is again, to repeat, is to hold politicians or aspiring politicians accountable, people who are aspiring to elected accountable for telling the truth, um, putting into place incentives for voters to learn the issues accurately, and so they can make wise choices. And number three, uh, making our journalism reliable again. If you put those things in place, the elections will function the way they should. And then you can have ranked choices, and ranked choices is a great idea. But that's not that's completely complementary. That could be it doesn't. What do I want to say? It doesn't contradict anything we're saying here. That could be part of the reform.
Okay. You mentioned political polarization, and we all know that's a major issue today.
Mm.
How would the Solutions Party bring Americans together instead
Okay.
of dividing them further?
Well, okay, why are we divided? Okay, there are a number of reasons. For one thing, as I've said, our politics, instead of being a competition of ideas, is now a circus of emotion manipulation and lies. If you listen to our politicians, they just lie left and right, and they do so in a way that tries to stoke people's emotions. And why can they get away with that? Well, because one of the reasons is because the sorry state of our journalism. People don't believe, they only believe what uh, their own pet political infotainment channel tells them. If we have robust, uh, accurate, or journalism that people can believe in again, I think that'll go a long way to diffusing the emotions that we're seeing now. If we hold politicians accountable, so that they can't lie to stoke people's emotions. They concentrate on the ideas instead of emotion manipulation and lies. I think that'll also go a long way. And the other thing is, if we break up the political parties, right now it's so tribal. If you get on X or in the old Twitter, the vicious tribalism that you see there is just mind-boggling. People just vicious toward each other because if you belong to one party or the other, and we want to get away from that. We don't want tribalism to be an influence in our democracy anymore. And one of the ways you do that is you make political parties temporary, so they can't go tribal, so they can't get a party first mentality. That in combination with one-term politicians who are have every incentive to be truthful and to focus on ideas instead of emotion manipulation. I think that if you put those things in place, the emotions will be will be diffused. And that's what we want to get back to. We'd want to get back to, or we want to get to a place where emotions are not what's driving our politics, but rather ideas. And we can do that. We can do that with these reforms.
I, I want to go back to some personal experience here,
Sure.
because you talk a lot about journalism
Yes.
and being a Vietnam vet. I remember when they started bringing the war to the living rooms in America,
Right.
which led to when I came home being called a baby killer, all kinds of, I mean, there was all kinds of derogatory things that were directed toward us as veterans. Nowadays, these same veterans come home with a parade, benefits,
Uh-huh.
whole 9 yards. What happened where when America was trusting Walter Cronkite, Chet, and all of those guys, to now we have a Fox News host as director of defense,
Mm-hmm.
secretary of defense, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Right. Secretary of Defense. Uh-huh.
So when you speak of journalism, there has been a complete 720-degree turn, not 360.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we get away from this sensationalism when journalism has always affected the minds of those that participate in mass media?
Right. Well, our proposal is the following. Just as doctors are certified, just as lawyers are certified, just as database engineers are certified, just as truck drivers and ambulance drivers are certified, we need to certify our journalists and our news organizations. That's number one. But number two, apart from certifying them, we need to give them a grade, evaluating them based on certain variables like how neutral are they? For example, a journalist, how neutral are they? How relevant are the articles that they're writing? How well written are the articles that they're writing? And so if you graduate from college and you have a journalism degree, you'll be certified, and then you'll be graded depending on the quality of your articles. Now, for a news organization, we want the same thing. And what would be one of the important things that would improve a grade of a certified news organization is if they're presenting a range of views. For example, in the case of the Vietnam War, you know, were really both sides being presented in a fair way to the American public about what was going on? And we had politicians who were lying, and that was part of the problem. People didn't stopped having faith in what they were being told by politicians. And so you want to have news organizations that are really focusing on the news and focusing in on giving it a neutral way, non-biased way. And then if they're going to be commentary, political commentary, that a range of views are presented. Now, why do we need certified news organizations? Why do we need certified journalists? Because as I had mentioned earlier, right now, anybody with a laptop and a web page can start a news site. Okay, so suppose, James, I start a news site and I make a deep fake video of you doing something horrible, robbing a jewelry store or something. How are people going to know if that's real or not? Well, the first question they will ask, was it published on a certified news site? Or was it certified on Joe Sixpack's news site? As deep fakes and other AI-based technologies make it much harder to tell what is real and what's not. You might hear an audio of the president talking, but do you know if that's real or not? Or was it fake generated? Well, the question will be, well, is it what, published on a certified news site, or was it published on some guy's website? And if it's not published on a certified website, then you can pretty much be pretty sure that that's not a real, that they've ascertained that it's a fake video or fake audio. This is one of the reasons why it's so critical we have certified news sites, as it becomes increasingly easy to generate fake video, fake audio. But on top of that, we want to have our news organizations, be evaluated for, not being just propaganda, emotional, lies, and emotion manipulating infotainment channels, which they are now. Now, I said earlier that one of the problems why we got to this stage is because traditional news doesn't make money anymore. The way they make money is by exactly what we're seeing on Fox News or on NBC or others, where their business model is emotion manipulation, getting people riled up. Okay, if we have, the certified, if somebody wants, if Fox wants to continue to do that, they can do that, but they just won't be certified. And so that's why we need to have a certified, uh, uh, news organizations and journalists. And on top of that, as I was saying, it's no longer a real business now to provide news. So we have to have a national fund, journalism fund, into which the government can contribute, private companies contribute, individuals contribute. And if you're a certified journalist, you will automatically qualify for a monthly stipend, and that stipend will increase depending on the number of articles you write, the quality of the articles you write, so we can make journalism a living again. People can live as being a journalist, and that will help bring back small town journalism, which is so crucial. Small town journalism has disappeared because that's not a business anymore. But we've got to stop thinking of it as a business. We have to start thinking of it as an aspect of our national defense, because our journalism protects us from enemies from both without and within, from outside of our company and in. And it helps identify, it helps give people the truth and the information that they need to make decisions about, how they're going to vote. It helps identify corruption in whether it be the corruption at the national level or at the local small town level. And so we establish a national journalism fund that will allow companies to concentrate on the news and not have to do, this emotion manipulation stuff to earn money, to keep the doors open, to keep the lights on. And so that's one of the things we're proposing. You certify journalists, you certify news organizations, you give them a grade, and you make a national journalism fund available so that you don't have to, publish emotion manipulating lies in order to make a living.
Sounds like utopia, but but
Well, it's actually not, though. I mean, really, we're talking about some really concrete things that can be established. I mean, if we can certify doctors, why can't we certify journalists? If we can certify a university, why can't we certify a news organization? If we're going to put
well,
800 billion, 800,
supposedly, I mean, supposedly that was the job with what was it, Associated Press, and what was the other that we had two news organizations. I mean, that was supposedly, they were supposed to safeguard this. That's why I'm saying,
well,
all of a
yeah.
sudden it became, I mean, fake news was something that I had not heard of, especially when you were talking about the three major networks.
Mhm. Well, yeah. The thing is, a lot of it is they give extremely biased points of view. They or they don't they purposely don't uh, talk about things that make that they're going to upset their viewers.
Right.
And you'll hear, a politician will be caught doing something terrible, and you'll read about it in the New York Times, for example, but you won't find it on Fox News, or something you won't find it on MSNBC. And yeah, so I think that if we put in those, you certify the news organizations, certify the journalists, you give them a grade based on how well they present the news, how many points of view that they provide, or that they give their viewers, because you want to have viewers exposed to a range of point of views, be it the left and the right and the center. And then on top of that, you have a national journalism fund, because you just have to recognize that news has to be thought of as a critical national resource, accurate news, just like our national defense, and that unfortunately you can't make money in the news business anymore. And that's why they've become emotion manipulating political infotainment channels. That's what they're in the. It's like wrestling. It's like it's not if you go see professional wrestling, nobody goes to watch professional wrestling to see the art of the sport. They go there to get riled up.
They
And
go to
that's
get entertained.
exactly.
Precisely.
And that's exactly what our quote unquote news organizations are doing now, is that it's political infotainment, meant to get people riled up, meant to get people coming back for their daily infusion of rage-inducing, nonsense. And that's, like I say, these emotions are very addictive. So people keep coming back, and we want to get these addictive emotions out of the picture. Have people having our news organizations really providing the news, certifying in a way so people can know that they're and the certification, by the way, and the grades could be sort of like a Rotten Tomatoes type of
Oh yeah, yeah.
where you have multiple ways, you have multiple evaluators, you know, and then you take an average score. And so it's not just one organization evaluating the news organization. You can have AI programs. You can even have part of this journalism, I would go to people who evaluate journalists, who evaluate news organizations, and then you take an average score, you know, and then people can be a lot more assured that this news organization or that news organization are trustworthy. And if this news organization or this political infotainment channel doesn't want to get certified, okay, they don't have to get certified. But if they publish something, if they publish a video of James E. King, a fake video, beating up an old woman on the street, well, okay, was that on a certified news station? No, it was on this political infotainment channel. So we know it's probably not real, because no certified news station is publishing it.
Precisely. Let's talk about some of the challenges and the future of your party.
Okay.
How do you plan to gain traction in a political landscape that's dominated by two major parties?
Well, see, I think people are sick and tired of the situation we see now. I think that they're really, I mean, look at the Democratic Party. People, they have extremely low rating. The Republican Party is basically become a cult. And I think the vast majority of the people are sick and tired of what they're seeing. And I think they're ready for change. And so our idea is to, first of all, we're getting ever more traction on X, and we're going to start expanding our social media presence. And, we're just going to try to get as many people excited and this is possible. Once we get a certain minimum number, or a certain number of social media, a certain level of social media presence, start to try to raise money and to get the political party established here in Oregon, present candidates for the various options, and then go national, go nationwide. And I think that I really believe that people are ready for new ideas and are sick of politics as usual. And I think that the ideas we're presenting now, it really, when it comes down to it, James, all of this really, really comes down to one really basic thing. It's about making sure power cannot be concentrated in the hands of career politicians and their special interest allies. It's about, making sure that power is allocated in very limited segments, so that it can never become, the monopoly of career politicians. It's about reforming our business so that out of control greed in the marketplace cannot cause harm. Uh, it's really about these basic things, putting into place a way to increase transparency, to give people incentive to educate themselves, whether for a new career or for the issues. It's about holding politicians or aspiring politicians accountable for their lies. It's really about these basic things that we really have to address in order for our democracy and our economy to really achieve their potential. You get this crap out of the crap that we're dealing with now out of the picture, and our democracy will flourish, our economy will flourish, our middle class will grow, and we'll have an opportunity rich economy that we want. And let me just say one last thing here. You know, what I consider to be the greatest squandered resource of all is human talent. I can't tell you how many times it's broken my heart, whether I've been in China, whether I've been in South America, or whether I've been in this country, to see people who never had the chance to achieve their potential, kids who will never have the chance to achieve their potential, and every wasted mind, every wasted talent is it's a loss for all of us. Let's let's wait, let's try to make a country where everybody has the chance to have a fulfilling life. Everybody has a chance to achieve their potential. And let's take that worldwide. Let's set an example that people want to follow. If we have our act together, we will destroy the autocracies of the world simply by the power of our example. So let's get our act together here. Let's make a functioning democracy. Let's make an opportunity rich, growing economy that gives everybody a chance to achieve their potential. And we'll provide them with the educational infrastructure to do that. Let's That's the vision that we want, where everybody has a chance to have a fulfilling life and achieve their potential. We don't want any more wasted lives.
Uh, what kind of response have you received from voters, political insiders so far?
Okay, well, everybody, and I mean everybody I've talked to, the response has been overwhelmingly positive, and that really is extremely encouraging. You talk to people, you talk to people respectfully, you present your ideas, and people are really get excited about this stuff. Everybody agrees that things are screwed up. You know, people are having, are working ever more. They're on a they're finding it harder to be happy. And by the way, one of the ways to destroy democracy is to make people believe that they can never that the pursuit of happiness is impossible because they're just always on a treadmill, living paycheck to paycheck, one slip up away from catastrophe. And people want change. People understand that things aren't working. And if you present these ideas, without exception, people have been very positive about them. So I am absolutely convinced that once we get some traction, this will really take off. Now, what are the things standing against us? Well, very powerful forces. Career politicians are going to be dead set against it. The entrenched political parties are going to be entrenched against, against it. The special interests that benefiting from the present system are going to be against it. Uh, we're taking on some really, really powerful, forces here, entrenched forces. But once the people buy into this, those will be swept away, and we'll start a new era of a functioning democracy and a functioning economy that provides opportunities for all.
Now, do you, as a party, do you plan to start this as a national movement, or is this going to be started on a local level?
Well, we want to start first. I would love to do it on a national level, work with people in different states. But what we need to do is um, we need to get registered as a political party here, and we're planning to do that. We just have to we have to we need a certain minimum number of signatures. We have an organization that is ready to do that. That's going to require some money. I don't want to request money now until I have a certain minimum following. And also, I really want people to be convinced that if they do donate, that this will go exclusively to realizing the party. I don't want anybody to think that this is like some get rich quick scheme on my part. The money doesn't matter to me, the fame, the power doesn't matter to me. All I care about is, doing what so many of us care about, doing something to make, things better. And so the idea to answer your question is to get at least established here in Oregon, to take on some of the conventional candidates, and to gain some momentum. I think that once we get some visibility, once we get some traction, I think things will move forward very quickly because people are going to buy into this, I believe.
Yes, from what I've read and talking to you, I can see where this could definitely be something of the future. I've always been for term rights, term limits, excuse me. But I've also thought that we should have age limits also. I don't see someone my age, 80, 90 years old. I mean, we had a congresswoman out here that had to be wheeled in. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like you said, holding on to power until that
Yes,
last.
exactly. Yes, it's just crazy. It's absolutely. I mean, this is why Donald Trump actually won because Joe Biden, he drank the Kool-Aid. He should have just been a one term. He should have made that very clear. And we should have had a real competition on the Democratic side. No, he drank the Kool-Aid, and and there should have been all sorts of warning signs. I mean, they were hiding him. They wouldn't take him. And so yeah, we want actually, but I believe we want our elected officials to be a mosaic of the American society instead of being a rich lawyers club where we are now. We want to have elected officials, for example, people who are like the small business owner in North Carolina, the school teacher in Wyoming, the doctor in LA, the furniture salesman from New Mexico, and we want to have a range of ages and because we want to have a range of points of view in our elect, in Congress, for example. And so I don't actually have a problem with age as long as the person is lucid and as long as the person is only a served one term, because they can provide interesting perspective that needs to be part of the discussion. But what I do disagree with, though, as what you say, is when you get these people who, yeah, they just, I mean, look at Dianne Feinstein in California. As you know, I think she died in office,
Yeah,
practically.
like I said, she had to
Yeah,
be wheeled in. She had to
yeah,
be wheeled into the Congress.
yes. And then
It's just
Nancy Pelosi, and then yeah, it happens over and over and over again.
on
And
both sides,
On
not
both,
just one.
yes, on both sides, exactly on both sides. And the other thing that is so disturbing is that incumbents are like 95% likely to be reelected because they have the name recognition and they have the support of the special interests, they have the support of the entrenched parties, and that is crazy. That is absolutely you know, we want to get that we want fresh blood in every election. We don't want to have people automatically. In some cases, they don't even have any competition. In some of these ultra red places or ultra blue places, the parties don't even try to compete. And we don't want that. We don't want a
I mean,
situation.
how many judges and politicians do you see running unopposed? Please, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
because
it's just crazy. We got to put it into that, and it involves, like I say, getting rid of the tribalism, getting rid of the career politicians, getting rid of the entrenched political parties, and having our our democracy being the dynamic form of government that it should be, with new ideas, with a competition of ideas, fresh blood, people eager to serve. They serve their one term and they get out. Period.
so if elected officials cannot seek reelection, how would you ensure a pipeline of qualified candidates?
Well, I think that's in the finalists. What the voters will do. If somebody, you know, if for example, let's say James King is the representative now, and everybody loves the job James King's do. Okay, what are the voters going to do? They're going to vote for somebody who promises to carry on James King's legacy, the one who the same ideas. maybe even improve upon them, so that the continuity will come not through people, but through the ideas. Because our politics should be not about people, not about personalities, but about ideas. We should never listen to a politician who says they are the ones, they are the only ones who can, you know,
Fix this.
fix this. Yes, it's never that. Politics should always be about ideas, never about people. So if you want continuity, then look for the continuity of the ideas, not for the continuity of the person.
Well, now, in the era of growing income inequality, what measures would the Solution Party take to ensure fair economic growth?
Well, as I say, um, it's we can't really ensure economic growth, but what you can do is you can put into place the ingredients that will bring about the robust, opportunity-rich economy that we want. And so, what we believe is that if you have unlimited energy, if you have an adaptive and creative workforce, and the creativity and the adaptability come through having education and training be readily available at low cost. If you have a government that invests in this infrastructure, if you have businesses that are not only concerned about making money, but making a positive contribution, if you have these ingredients, then the economic growth will come. The middle class will naturally grow. And and then you could also put into place some tax policies that help spur things. I mean, for example, and I haven't really thought this through thoroughly at all, but where you have the ultra rich, they would be taxed at a higher rate, but they can reduce their taxes if they invest either in making jobs in this country or in the educational infrastructure, donating to a school, for example, or in the energy infrastructure. And then if they do that, you give them a tax credit. And so what we want is kind of a trickle down. If they invest in something and they invest in a business, you want the rich to get richer, as I say, but you just want the rate of growth to be less than the rate of growth of the middle class. And our theory is if you have these things in place that I've talked about, the economic growth will come, the opportunities will come, the middle class will grow. And what we want, as I say, we want technology to make people's lives easier, where they're working less, they can spend more time with family, more time learning skills, more time staying in shape, more time or getting in shape, more time, cooking healthy home cooked meals instead of eating, highly caloric garbage, because they don't have time to do anything else. We want to improve the quality of life for people so that they can have a balance between work and the rest of their life. We want people to have fulfilling lives that are filled with growth and personal fulfillment.
Uh, Veterans and seniors.
Mhm.
Is there a plan for veterans and seniors to be taken care of, or to at least experience
Yes,
the dignity of their old age uh,
yes,
by the Solutions Party?
yes, there is. And as a matter of fact, it's a way that we can also address our immigration problem. You see, all of these, I've spent most of the last 20 years actually in South America, and I've met many people who escaped from places like Venezuela, from places like Nicaragua, from places like Cuba, fleeing tyranny. Despite what some of our politicians say that these people are criminals, that these people are mentally ill, the vast majority of people who are fleeing are good, hardworking people who would make us proud by the values that they have. Let's set up a system. We don't want people coming into the country willy-nilly, but let's have a system where, for example, right now we have a grave problem in our smaller towns across the country because these smaller towns lack economic opportunity. So young people leave and it starts a death spiral. in these smaller communities. So we can stop that with an infusion of of people looking to settle in this country. And that doesn't mean we're going to impose on that. They would be invited by the communities so that they could contribute to senior care, local senior care. We could set up ways to, if they come in, they would be given the basics to live and be paid less initially, but we could set up low-cost senior care facilities in these smaller towns, low-cost mental health care facilities in these smaller towns. We could set up tourism infrastructure in these smaller towns using this labor, infusion of labor. The schools would begin to revive because you would have immigrant children. And so this is one thing we can use immigration to actually increase our prosperity in some of the places where prosperity is particularly hard to come by now in our smaller towns and cities. We can also set up what I call charter cities on the border. Charter cities are cities which would house many people, immigrants from around the world. But these would be cities where we could manufacture things at very low cost, compete with China, where we could have inexpensive senior care facilities. For example, right now, uh, you know, if well, you know, you want to send your father, your parents to a senior care facility down the road, it's probably going to cost you $10,000 a month. Let's set up high quality senior veterans care, mental health care facilities in these charter cities. And these charter cities, through their manufacturing, low cost manufacturing, through the range of services they provide, can become self sustaining economically. So we keep the good news is we get a solution to the immigration refugee crisis. We help these people who are fleeing tyranny, poverty, corruption, violence, giving them opportunities to work, to manufacture things. And for example, like in Peru, where I've spent much of my time, we could have manufacturing facilities that manufacture clothes, toys, electronics by Peruvians in these cities for Peruvians in Peru at prices that they're now paying for Chinese goods. So the Peruvians, when they go to the market or they go to the store to buy, I don't know, a microwave, they can see made by Peruvians for Peruvians, the same price as what the Chinese product is. And they're going to buy the stuff made by Peruvians. And so this will help us. We can use the immigration problem or the issue, challenge, to actually weaken the autocracies. Because right now, the autocracies are using immigration to weaken the democracies. We can turn that around and make it work for us. And at the same time, solve a lot of these problems like senior care and mental health care and and um, and other issues that other medical care, other services, other manufacturing that we can't practically do now. We can, you see, if you get away from the politics of it all and start focusing on the ideas, we can come up with best of both world solutions that really work.
Yes, sir, I do. I wholeheartedly agree with you, and uh, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are also thinking, like, why haven't we heard of this before? Uh, but before I let you go, where do you kind of see the Solutions Party in the next 10 years?
Well, what I would hope is that within 10 years, we're a national party. We have candidates, nationwide for all different offices, statewide offices um, for national office. And I would hope that we'd be established party. But even if we are an established party, as I've said, we're going to put it, once we're established party, we're going to put a 12-year limit on ourselves. But we're not going to become another entrenched, institutionalized party first party. We're going to walk the walk, talk the talk. Our candidates are expected to serve only one term, and they can't run for another office while they're you're not going to have a Ron DeSantis like situation who's running for president while he's being governor. And we don't want that. We don't want that. We want you concentrate on your job 100%. And then after your job is through, 2 years later, you can think about running for another thing. But you're not going to be using your present job to try to get another job. And so like I say, I hope that this is a national party, but a national party that will serve as example, and that we will be implementing these ideas to make political parties in general temporary, to get other parties to agree that their candidates will only serve one term, to get the lies and emotional manipulation out of it. And hopefully, yeah, that's where I'm hoping to go. And it starts here, first step.
It sounds like a very fulfilling journey, as well as one filled with a lot of expectations. And I'm looking forward to tracking your progress. It was very good talking with you this evening. I like to bring guests on that are kind of uh, away from the beaten path because, as you can see, following this path has led to a lot of chaos. So I am bringing on candidates like you, parties like you, to try to see if there is a chance for us to have an alternative to what is currently going on. Uh, so thank you so much for your time. Would you have some final thoughts for our listeners
Yeah,
before you go?
just really quickly, our website is www.solutionsparty.org. And so that's where we have our ideas. We'll be posting some new ideas regarding other critical issues in our country. Our X account, or what Twitter is, the @ Solutions Party. And so we're publishing daily on X, and we're gonna right now we're just doing posts, but pretty soon we'll be going to video casts, and we're looking forward to getting as many people excited about this, and getting the ideas flowing, and let's work together. Let's make things better. We can do it.
I totally agree with you. And if you need any help from us here on We the People, all you have to do is we're just an email away.
Well, you
So
know what? I'm going to do that. I'm excited, and I hope that we can continue the dialogue and maybe talk about again at some point in the near future. Maybe talk about some of the ideas, specific ideas, in more detail. Because right now we've kind of talked about everything, but very superficially.
yeah, as I said, as we can get closer to the idea, look on your website. Once again, give us that web address again.
Yeah, it's solutionsparty.org. Just exactly spelled how it sounds. Solutionsparty.org.
Now, are there other members of the party that we might also maybe have on the show, or at least
Yeah,
get the names out there?
yeah, yeah. I'll introduce you to my partner in crime on this, and I'd be happy. He's quite a bit younger, but I want to have I want to have a range of. I mean, this is about having a range of. We want different people. We want a range of people working on this. Not just old white guys. We want we want to have younger people. We want to have people from different backgrounds. Different faiths, different. This is, the mosaic of our experiences, the different, our diversity of ideas, are our greatest strength, and we must always remember that.
That used to be one of the mottos of our country. One of the principles I think that we've left behind. Uh, you know,
Yeah,
uh, just like the scroll on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. Uh, I think we've gotten away from uh, those basic principles that America has been found on,
yeah,
and you know, uh, and that's coming from a minority. So yes, definitely give me an email, give me his information, and we'll try to
yeah.
get him on as soon as possible.
Perfect. And just one last thing, the email is really simple too. It's just info@solutionsparty.org. So if anybody wants to email, that's just info@solutionsparty.org, and that's on the website too.
Oh, all right, sir. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to having you and your colleague back on We the People.
Well, we'll look forward to it, James. It's been an honor, and I've truly enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation. And
Thank you.
I hope the Steelers do a little better next year.
Oh my God, goodness! Thank you so much.
They kind
But
of petered out there at the end.
wait, but it looks like you guys up there in the Northwest are getting a pretty good team together. I see Seattle's kind of seeing putting their thing together here. I'm not sure. You guys might be contenders out there this year.
Yeah, well, let's hope. I mean, let's hope. But yeah, I was happy to see the Eagles win. I must confess, I was. Uh, so, anyway, wonderful talking with you, James, and I'll look forward to talking again soon.
Yes, sir. You have a great evening.
You too. Thanks again.
Yes, sir. Yes, that was uh, Mr. Jaqua from the Solutions Party. And we look forward to having them back on the show. And make sure you go to their website, see what they're all about. Thank you so much. Looking forward to talking to you again next week, right here on We the People. Have a great night, everyone.